amazing humans on the net. Today I thought we could have a bit more relaxed chat about books, but also about a few other things. You are watching this video on the 31st of January, the last day of the month, during which we are resetting our goals and making sure we are on the right track for the year. I am not a huge goal setter, and usually there's nothing that I suddenly do drastically different in January, but there are a few small things that I tweaked recently in relation to my habits, and I thought that it would be useful if I share them with you, just in case they might be helpful to you as well. So the first one is the tiniest little tweak I made to my morning routine that actually has had a huge impact on how much I read. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I think we all suddenly should be reading huge amounts. I don't believe in numerical reading goals. This is more about replacing a small unhealthy habit with a healthy habit. And you're not going to believe how tiny this little tweak is, but it has had a really compound effect on my day-to-day. Listen to this. So basically, when I wake up, what I would normally do would open the blinds in my room, and then I would go downstairs. Obviously, somewhere in between there is a bathroom visit, but I'll spare you the details on that. And so here's what I do now. I wake up, I open the blinds, and then I grab the book from my bedside table, which is the book that I would normally be currently reading, and I take it with me downstairs. And what this means in practice is that whenever I have the tiniest little moment to myself, for example, when I'm waiting for my kettle to boil, instead of grabbing my phone, I grab the book. And yes, sometimes it will just be one paragraph that I managed to read in that time, or maybe even a couple of sentences. But still, you're reading instead of staring at your phone. I dare you to try it. And it's funny how we all know about the idea of always having a book with yourself when you leave the house, but no one talks about having a book near you when you are in the house. And I must say, for me, about 90% of the time, when I do have both my book and my phone with me, I will choose to pick up the book over my phone. And this is why I always say we should be reading what we enjoy reading. When that particular story is compelling to you, you will be making better choices in situations like these. Now, the second January routine that I wanted to talk to you about, which is actually not so much a routine, but a recent purchase that has improved my routine, and that is my new dumbbells. So when I was in my corporate job, I had access to the gym, but now that my new job requires me to work 100% from home, which I love, by the way. I love being at home alone, and that was when I was still commuting, a huge luxury. Now, during the day, I'm home on my own, my kids are at school, my husband's at work, and it's just me and my dog. I absolutely love a quiet house. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yes, so now that I work from home, I struggled with access to the right gym equipment that I needed. And by the way, most of my exercises are strength training. If you're interested to know, I just simply follow Klein, the Irish instructor, on YouTube. She is absolutely amazing. But obviously I had a very limited selection of weights at my home. I had this random few pairs of dumbbells, with the heaviest one being 10 kilo. And for longest time, I would play with this idea of maybe signing up to a local gym. And I did go a few times, but then I would pay a sporadic, temporary one-off fee that would work out to be very expensive, actually, in the long run. And also the time investment that you need to put into going to the gym, because you need to count the driving time, parking time, signing in, getting changed time, shower time. Not that you don't need a shower at home. So I wasn't sure what to do, but I finally bit the bullet, and I'm so glad I did. I wish I haven't been waiting for that long, because I have this beautiful new set, and actually it hasn't been as expensive as I expected. I bought it during January sales. So the whole thing together with the rack cost me less than £200, which I think is excellent value, because I don't know why, but some of the dumbbells sets are so expensive. They can go up to £5,000. And so having this set in my house, in my office where I normally exercise, which I know is a strange place to have your dumbbell set, but it just means it's always there. So there are no excuses. I just grab them and exercise. If you want to know what's my heaviest weight here, it's this one, 15 kilo pair. And no, I don't do bicep curls with this pair, okay? This is just for my Romanian deadlifts and for my lunges. I use the dumbbells probably every other day, so it's a great return on investment. So if you, like me, you are hesitating whether to spend some money on something that is directly related to your health, please don't hesitate, because that is the best investment you can make. So the final little third tweak I made in January is trying to cut down on sugar intake. Now, sugar is something I have heavily limited for quite a long time now. However, I am not able to entirely get rid of it, because I don't know whether you, like me, and also absolutely have to have something sweet after my meal. If you're one of those people, please let me know if you've managed to overcome it and how. So far, I've tried and failed. So at least what I'm trying to do is to make sure that whatever sweet thing I have after my meal, it's relatively healthy and it doesn't have processed sugar. And so I've landed on these three things that I constantly make on rotation. So it'll be either homemade protein balls, and sometimes they'll be with cocoa powder, sometimes there'll be almond flavor. I throw in whatever nuts I have in the house, usually add some coconut oil, a little bit of maple syrup or dates for sweetness. So that's one thing. The other thing, if I don't have time to make anything or I haven't made anything in advance, it will be just a piece of dark chocolate with usually some nut spread on top of it. So for example, peanut butter or almond butter spread over the top of dark chocolate, or even better, you can melt both in your microwave and then put a tiny bit of sprinkle of sea salt on top. That's also good as a backup. But I'll tell you what I've been obsessed with most recently, and I feel I need to tell you about this because my family think I am absolutely crazy eating this. So I basically take raw eggs, a couple of eggs, and I separate the egg yolks and egg whites, set the egg whites aside, and then I beat the egg yolks with my electric mixer, and then just add a little bit of either maple syrup or some kind of sugar substitute. I often use erythritol, and then I eat it raw as it is. Tell me, is that absolutely bonkers? Because I absolutely love it. The idea of this comes actually from my childhood, because as kids growing up in a communist country where there was no access to produce, this is what my mom would sometimes give us as a dessert. It would be raw egg beaten with sugar. That was it. We even had a name for it. It was called kogiel mogiel. Anyway, I just thought I would put it out there because I have not come across anyone doing the same thing, but there must be some people eating it too. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It must be the same people who also like to eat cake batter before it goes in the oven. Yes, that's also me. Now let's go back to talking about books. And the one thing I wanted to talk about specifically is audiobooks versus reading books. And that's because one of the subscribers has asked me what I think about audiobooks, and that made me think and reflect a bit more about the topic. Now, first and foremost, I want to say that whatever method works with you and your lifestyle, that is the winning method for you, and you should just keep going. Because I think, like everything in life, right, there are pros and there are cons. So yes, maybe when we read a paper copy of a book, we tend to retain more information, we tend to remember more. There is something about that direct engagement between your mind and the text that you seeing in front of you that requires 100% focus, and because of that we do remember more information afterwards. However, maybe you have a medical condition that prevents you from reading paper books, or maybe you have very young children and very little time, or maybe you work very long hours, but you are doing lots of driving, then there is no better way for you to read. I always say we should read what we like and we should read however we like. And this is, by the way, my approach to this channel as well. I don't want to be reading books to create content. I'm creating content because of the books I'm reading. There's a huge difference. And yes, on some occasions, an audiobook may not work. For example, where there will be an unusual prose. In fact, let me grab a book that I'm reading right now. 1 second. I brought with me not one but two books. One is Scaffolding, which I'm currently reading. And basically here, you sometimes have just one sentence on one page, and it is not always directly connected to what's been said on the page before or the page after. There's also a little bit of French in there that is not translated until the end of the book. For that reason, I don't think that would work well as an audiobook. And then the other book is Enter Ghost by, oops, I dropped my bookmark. We don't want to do that. So this is a novel about an actress who goes to Palestine, and there she meets some people and she gets involved into producing Hamlet on stage. So within the novel, you also have quite a few pages where you clearly have a play within the novel. And for this reason, I'm not convinced that this would work well as an audiobook. And then also sometimes you have books that have lots of graphics in them. And again, it might be difficult to appreciate them unless you read them. But sometimes a well-narrated audiobook can actually deliver better experience than reading a paper copy. And I'm convinced of that because I have just finished a book like this. I literally just finished it this morning and I've got to talk about it because it is such a great book. And the narration of it on Audible is an absolute perfection. The book I'm talking about is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and it is narrated by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Yes, that Maggie, the very well-known actress. What she did with this narration is a masterpiece. I want to go ahead and say that actually I don't think I would finish this book if it wasn't for Maggie's narration. I'm not sure about copyrights, otherwise I would play you a sample here on this video, but please go and check it out on Audible. She has done an amazing job. And then not only the narration is an absolute perfection, in between the chapters you have these pieces of music that are just so well fitting with the book. The whole experience was just divine. You really feel like you are transported into Esther's life. If you have not read this book, Esther is the main protagonist of the story. She's a college student and she struggles with mental health, and we follow her and her point of view as she develops this clinical depression. But not just that, she also struggles with societal norms, with her sense of identity. This book is definitely not for everyone, and if it wasn't for Maggie Gyllenhaal's narration, like I said, I don't think I would finish a paper copy, just because the book has that very descriptive writing and relatively slow pace, plus it's a bit depressing. The existential pain is portrayed so realistically here. So no, I don't think this book is for everyone. However, this narration really made me come up with excuses to go for a walk or do some house chores just so I could get back into listening to Maggie's voice. And I said that the writing is very descriptive, but don't get me wrong, the style of writing is exquisite. Sylvia Plath has some of these sentences that just stay with you forever, and some of them hit me really hard. I just brought a notebook so I can read a couple of them to you. It wasn't the silence of silence, it was my own silence. And another one. I felt dreadfully inadequate. The trouble was, I had been inadequate all along. And by the way, top tip for listening to audiobooks, pause. pause the audiobook to reflect a bit more on what you've just heard, or even write things down, because that will bring you closer to that experience as if you were reading a paper book. It will make you feel more engaged with the book. Anyway, this is what I do. I've also written down that somewhere in the beginning she has a description of how she felt about chemistry. And the reason why I wrote it down is because this is exactly how I've always felt about chemistry. It's just that I would never be able to write it so well. She hit the nail in the head. I guess that's what separates us from the great writers of this world. After I finished this book, I went into this a bit of a frenzy about digging up all the information I could find on Sylvia Plath. There is also a note on biography within the audiobook, so that's also very helpful. I also listened to her poems. Some of them are available on YouTube. Some of them she reads herself. If you are going to do just one poem, go and find a poem titled Daddy. Oh, it ripped me apart. And for this poem, actually, it might be worth to know a little bit about her life and about her parents. But yes, she was first and foremost a poet. And actually, when you're reading The Bell Jar, which was her only novel, you can see that, because The Bell Jar is full of these poetic metaphors and detailed descriptions that clearly only someone with those sort of skills could have written. She was a fascinating person, obviously had a very tragic end to her life, but I want to see a movie based on her life, the one with Gwyneth Paltrow in it. Let me know if you've seen it. I'm sorry, I wasn't planning to rumble on so much about The Bell Jar today, but I think it's just because I finished reading it this morning. It's so fresh on my mind, and like I said, I've been blown away by the narration. It is by far the best narration I have ever listened to. Anyway, let me say one more thing about this book. I want to touch on the famous fig tree metaphor, in which Esther, the main character in the book, compares life to a fig tree. You've got these different options in your life which are represented by a fig, but if you choose one, then you lose all the others and they effectively go and rot. So for example, if you choose this man as your husband, you lose out on another. If you choose to have family and children, you can't travel or you can't work professionally. Let's remember, this is the 1950s. I know that today's a different world and women are told that we can have everything, or can we? And so Esther is suffocated by that idea of having to make a decision, of having to move forward, and generally of working within these narrow societal rules that are put upon both men and women, but especially upon women. Anyway, so this metaphor made me think about something that I heard the author of Brotherless say. This was during the publicly recorded conversation organized by Women's Prize for Fiction. It was available online and I bought a ticket and I attended. It was fascinating to hear. And the conversation was between the two winners of last year's Women's Prize for Fiction. So between Naomi Klein, last year's non-fiction prize winner for her novel Doppelganger, which I have to read, and fiction winner Ganeshananthan, the author of Brotherless, the book I talked about on this channel before. It was a very good conversation, mainly focused on the process of writing, but somewhere in the middle of it, the author of Brotherless said that Sashi, which was the name of the main character in her book, despite having this whole version of herself planned out. She was this 16-year-old girl wanting to go to school, wanting to study medicine, become a doctor, and basically help people. She was also in love with this local boy. But then obviously the civil war happened. And because of that civil war, she now suddenly had to shed all those dreams and create and test out a whole new version of herself. And so what the writer was saying was that she was trying to portray how arbitrary our lives are and how the path of our life, of our character, of our identity is shaped by our circumstances. For example, it's shaped by what country we happen to be born in. And so this, in relation to the fig tree metaphor in the bell jar, got me thinking how we are not only limited by the very specific options as defined and presented to us by the society we live in, we are also limited by the circumstances we are in. In other words, we are not only limited by which fig we choose, we are also limited because of what fig tree we happen to sit on. Wow, okay. That was deep. Read the bell jar. It is not just an account of that anguish of becoming of age. It is not just an account of mental illness. It is also a complex societal commentary. There is one more thing I would love to talk to you about today, and that is book ratings. So I have somehow managed to resist doing any kind of book ratings in my reviews. And that's because I have been struggling with that idea of narrowing down and putting all of your thoughts and your opinions on a book into 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 stars. It just seems to me like an impossible task to do. But I do appreciate that some of you may find it helpful. So let me know if you think you would benefit from me specifying how many stars I would give each book that I'm talking about. And I will do my best, okay? It will definitely not be round numbers. There will be some decimals, okay? You're gonna see 3.75 and 4.25 ratings, or maybe even I'll go up to 10. What if I had 1 to 10, then that gives me a bit of a bigger range. But maybe it's not necessary. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe the most important thing is to talk about books and describe my own experience with those books in detail, so that then you can assess for yourself whether and when to read that particular book. Maybe I'm worried about nothing. Let me know what you think. Do you find star ratings useful? Okay, we're going to end this video on a fun note, and in a second you will see footage which I will record on a separate day, where I draw a name of the winner of my book giveaway. So in my last week's video, I offered to send one of you this beautiful edition of My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. All you had to do, just drop a comment under the video. Okay, so it's Thursday the 30th of January, very late in the evening. It is 10:26 p.m. and I need to go to bed. So we're going to do this very quickly. Let me shake the jar one more time. And we're ready to pull out the name of the person who will receive this beautiful My Cousin Rachel book by Daphne du Maurier. So let me close my eyes. And the winner is Jig Jig Jai Jig. That's the name of the handle. Whoever you are, thank you so much for watching my videos and for making a comment. I am very grateful to all of you who are subscribing and commenting. Please keep the comments coming. In the meantime, again, congratulations to the lucky winner. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for next week's video, in which I will be recommending books to read for Valentine's. So we'll be talking all things romance, and there will be plenty of classics. There will be some short stories and also contemporary fiction. I'll see you then.